Hey, we welcome you on into another episode of the Big Time Sports Podcast Show. Mitch Spinell and Mitchell Balla here to give you the latest in the athletics world. Mitch is going to be back here with you, man. It's the middle of the week. We got the state tournament about to start, one of the first state tournaments, and a number of stories to get here as we enter into the weekend.
Yes, sir, Mitch. Good to be back, and so many stories. I know you and I actually got together outside of the podcast, and we were talking about some things already. And, believe it or not, since then, there's more stories to talk about. So this is going to be fun.
I was going to say, believe it or not, we actually do spend time with each other outside of doing this show. It's surprising that we actually do like each other. I mean, I've had some people in my life be like, "Are you actually like good friends with Mitch Balla?" I'm like, "Yeah, he's a cool dude." I mean, I got to hang out with him a couple of times. There was the whole baseball game thing that happened a few months ago that I can't bring up on here. But what I can bring up on here for you guys is our obviously our socials here. You can find us on this podcast here on YouTube. Be sure to like and subscribe. You can also go to Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and SoundCloud to find our latest episodes there. SoundCloud and Apple Podcasts audio only. Spotify and YouTube both have video options. You can also find us on our website, bigtimesportsohio.com. You can find our latest articles and videos there, and go to our Twitter page at BTS Ohio. You can also go to Big Time Sports Ohio on Facebook or Instagram, and then at Mitch Spinell, at Mitchell Balla, pretty much everywhere else. Mitch, I mean, we were talking about some of the games we were at this past week, and we'll get to those in a bit. But right now, it's state tournament weekend for wrestling and girls basketball. We have a number of teams still in the mix. We have one from my side, one from your side. We have Highland, the girls team, who started 8-6 on the year, now has won 14 in a row, going into a state semifinal matchup like they were at last season down in Dayton. And then your side has Canal Fulton Northwest making their first ever run in the Final Four.
Yeah, and listen, Northwest is going to have their hands full, Mitch. They take on an undefeated squad, but at this point, like we mentioned when talking about the tournament in general, seeds go out the window, records go out the window. One thing I know from when I was playing in, the playoffs in high school, you're 0-0, right? Anybody can beat anybody on any given day. You see it in professional sports. We're going to see it in a week in March Madness when somebody's bracket gets busted because a 15 seed beat the 2 seed probably. Indeed. So we're going to see it soon. So the record doesn't matter. Yeah, it's something to talk about, but for the players right now making a historic run like they've done for Northwest, you're not worried about the record. What you could be worried about is having the confidence, and I won't say cockiness, because at this point you should have confidence being one of the final 4 teams in Division II standing, having the confidence to say we're going to be the team that hands that team their first loss, right?
Sure, I can see that.
Because sometimes, Mitch, I experienced it firsthand, although different baseball. We were 29-0 heading into the playoffs in the Sweet 16. Sometimes when you face adversity for the first time that year that you're not used to, it can break you. And so Northwest is more than capable of doing what they've done to all these teams. I mean, you look at their district or the regional final matchup against Canfield, Mitch, it wasn't really a game. And they have the power to impose their will on other teams. It's not going to be an easy task, but 1 p.m. they play in the state semifinals. And then should they win, 10:45 a.m. on Saturday morning, you can find that game on ohsa.com. It tells you where to go to buy the ticket to be able to watch that game live. But listen, Northwest, I'm pulling for them, Mitch. Obviously, a local team that we cover here on Big Time Sports. And it's also just a feel-good story. Getting to go down there last year with Jackson for the first time in program history, you understand how special it is. And now I can only imagine how special it is for Northwest. And hopefully the Indians can bring back a Division II state championship trophy.
Well, they're going to play Proctorville Fairland this coming Thursday at 1:00 in the second game of the day. The first game of the day actually is going to pit the team that Northwest could face in the final, which is between Bryan High School and Cincinnati Purcell Marion. And if you go to bigtimesportsohio.com, you can find one of our latest articles there in one D. Alexander being named the 2023 Miss Ohio basketball. A heck of a season for a sophomore, the third straight player from the Cincinnati metro area to be named Miss Ohio, and she will be honored actually during halftime of the Northwest versus Fairland game.
And Mitch, Purcell Marion, for those unfamiliar in girls basketball, is a powerhouse program. Indeed. This is a team that, as crazy as it sounds, their goal is to get to states every year. And Mitch, more times than not, they have gotten to states every single year. I still remember they were down there last year. I cannot remember where they finished, obviously, because they played times before I was able to get in there for Jackson. And then the next day in the state championship, but Purcell Marion just pumps out great team after great team. And you mentioned third straight Miss Ohio from the greater Cincinnati area. So, and only a sophomore, Mitch. That's kind of scary to think about. And I'm sure other coaches in that area are already trying to figure out how are we going to stop her. She continues to get better over the next 2 seasons.
No doubt. I mean, I believe it was, yes, Purcell Marion did end up winning the Division III title last season over Worthington Christian. So they're looking to go back to back here. As far as what I mentioned before, the Highland Hawks, we have a preview for this on our website as well. They'll be taking on undefeated Tri-Village in the final game on Thursday at 8 o'clock over at UD Arena. I mean, Highland, they've got a number of good players. We mentioned it before. I mean, some of the top names include the IVC South's Player of the Year, Ashley Mullet. She's been averaging 16.5 points and 4.9 assists per contest this year. Over her last 5 playoff contests, she's averaged 18 points. She had a very solid performance over in the Hawks win on Saturday over Portsmouth Notre Dame to make the Final Four. Now, Tri-Village is going to have an interesting one because Riley Sagester was the runner-up for the Miss Ohio basketball honor in the state. Sagester has averaged 21 points, 3.8 assists, 3.7 rebounds, and 2.8 steals per game for the Patriots. She's also committed to Marshall University. She is a 43% shooter from the three-point line, 77.8 from the free throw line. And that's not to mention some of the other double-digit scorers you have on this Patriots squad. You got Morgan Hunt, who's committed to Thomas More. She's averaging around 14 points, 6.7 rebounds per game. And then Tori Richards at 13 points per contest. Kennedy Hager, Bella Black, Cindy DeLong, a number of solid names on the starting spots for Tri-Village as well. And then the winner of that game is going to end up facing either Toledo Christian, who is 22-4 on the season, or you could have New Middletown Springfield at 24-3. Both of them first time ever making the state semifinals. The Eagles have Kendall Braden, who's one of the top players, 18.7 points per contest, 2.7 steals. And then you got players like Mackenzie Royal Davis and Kalana Butler averaging double figures. And then Springfield has a solid pair in JC Mullen and Maddie Lesnack, who combined for 23 points in their regional final win, 34-28 over Buckeye Central. So the defense is really a huge focus for the Tigers team that allowed 0 double-digit scoring performances to the Bucks in that regional final. No player reached 10 points in the game for the Bucks. So it's going to be very interesting to see how they match up against a high-scoring squad like the Eagles. Well, we go through those matchups as well. We also had a number of boys finals from this past week. Now, the ones that we were kind of keeping tabs on throughout the week, especially in my area, were Highland and Garaway. And the Highland boys so far are still in the mix. They were able to take down Stuart Federal Hocking 55-51 on Tuesday night at Ohio University. It was 51 all with just a few seconds left. Sammy Detweiler makes a short jumper to give Highland the lead. Then Highland gets it back into the hands of Detweiler. They foul. He sinks 2 free throws, ices the game. Hocking runs out of time. So the Hawks will go on to play Westerville Northside Christian on Friday night for the Region 15 title back at the Convocation Center. And then whoever wins that game will have to face the winner of Maria Stein, Marion Local, and Convoy Crestview. Now, unfortunately for one of our area teams, and we'll get to another team here in just a little bit, the Garaway Pirates found their season come to an end with a 49-47 loss to Columbus Afrocentric to the Nubians on Wednesday night. A very interesting game down at OU because it was late in the game. I believe it was 45-44 with just a minute or so left. Garaway's Jackson Garver went up for a layup, and there was a block. I believe I'm trying to find the name of the Afrocentric player who ended up making the play. It was Dalen Swain. And there was some controversy there because some people thought that it might have been high enough for the referees to call goaltending right near the backboard, but there was no call made. And then Preston Steele went down and made an and one for the Nubians. So it gave them the 45-44 lead. Drew Mullet, however, came up big in the closing seconds with a corner 3-pointer to make it 47-45 Garaway with 39 seconds left. So Garaway just needs to make a stop. However, Swain goes down, makes a layup. They knot it up at 47. the Pirates would not score on their next possession. Then they would foul Afrocentric with 6 seconds left. Cortez Freeman made one of two free throws. He missed the second one. And on the ensuing drive down for Garraway, Garber attempted a long pass down court to Mullet, but it went over his head and out of bounds. So it gave Afrocentric the ball with a few seconds left. They get fouled. They shoot some free throws. Game iced. So the Nubians will advance to face South Point in the Division III state semis on Saturday at on Friday at 1:00. Excuse me. And then it will be a Garraway season coming to an end at 22-5. So I mean, it's a tough break for Garraway, but a very solid season nonetheless. And then Highlands, the last remaining hope for the IVC to be represented in the upcoming boys state playoffs. We also have a team in Downton in the mix still. I'll let you get to what we're about to talk here about in a second, because Downton is still in the mix, if I'm not mistaken, for the Division 4 state bracket. Downton played North Robinson Colonel Crawford the other night at the Fieldhouse, and it was 51-46. We mentioned this because the team that they're going to play next, Richmond Heights, we saw them play at the Fieldhouse. I will say this, Mitch. It was close at halftime. Cornerstone Christian made it a game in the second quarter by holding the Heights team to a couple of shots early on, and then things changed.
Things definitely changed. And Mitch, 37-31 was the score. Richmond Heights, who had come into the game, I believe, winning 45 or 46 in a row, last year's defending state champion for Division 4. Mitch, Cornerstone may have had a chance to have a lead, but we tried to keep track of how many turnovers, but there were so many we just weren't able to keep track. Richmond was not hitting some of their shots in the first half, and Cornerstone had many opportunities, but just turnover after turnover after turnover. What kept them in the game was the fact that Richmond Heights couldn't make some of their shots. You and I looked at each other heading to the halftime locker room and said, well, we're going to learn fast. Is Richmond Heights really good? Because, Mitch, they were very long and they were all athletic. They were just very, very sound athletic basketball players. But I told you the size of their wingspan, it looked like every player on the court, typically your wingspan is the same as your height. It looked like everyone's wingspan was longer than what their height was. And that's why Cornerstone Christian Academy had some difficulty passing the ball. And I said, well, we're going to learn. Are they well coached too? Mitch, I think we learned very quickly that Richmond Heights is not only talented, but very well coached too, as they won the third quarter 38-12 and ended up winning the game 93-52. It was never really in doubt. About 3 minutes into the third quarter, Richmond Heights came out. They couldn't miss from deep. They were getting into the lane, finishing at the rim. They made some adjustments, and there's a reason, Mitch, that they're the top team in Division 4 and ranked nationally in the top 50 across the United States. I believe a week or so ago, they were ranked 45th. I don't know if that ranking has gone up. This is a team that is loaded and can beat you from all spots on the floor, 1 through 5, couple guys off the bench. And Cornerstone Christian Academy, Mitch, is a very good basketball team. They were 22-4. This isn't like some team that just got hot, made a run. This is the exact same spot they got to last year. But right now, Richmond Heights is on a whole nother level. And some people say, well, they're Division 4. How good are they? Folks, they played Division 1 teams in the regular season this year. They beat St. Ed's in a thriller 83-80 this year at St. Ed's. They're battle tested. And they just play basketball. It looks like they're having fun. They have multiple sophomores on the team. One of the top sophomores in the 2025 class, a top 50 recruit on the team. This is going to be a very tall task for Dalton, Mitch. We'll have to wait and see. Obviously, Dalton getting to win and then stay and, their coaching staff scout a little bit. You only have 2 days to prepare for it as they play on Friday night now at the field house over at Canton McKinley. Their hands will be full, though, because what you and I saw, I think you and I both walked away from that game saying the Richmond Heights Spartans are as good as advertised.
Well, looking at some of the standings right now, it looks like Richmond Heights is near the top, if not at the top of the Max Prep standings. They are 20. Yeah, they have the undefeated record right now. They took a 22-8 lead in the first quarter, ended up having a 22-5 run to start the third quarter, and hit 6 threes in the third. Jeremy Wilson had a game high 26 points, 14 of them in that third period. And even Quinn Kwasniak, who was Coach Babe Kwasniak's son, obviously, he averaged nearly 30 points a game this season. He was held to 20, and he had a bunch of 3-pointers this year, and he wasn't able to get that going for Christian. So Heights, as you said, won 46 in a row, 26-0 on the season, 20 of those wins by 20 points or more, including all 4 of their postseason games. And we'll be seeing them take on, as we mentioned, Downton at the Field House this coming weekend. I'm very curious to see if Highland could potentially meet up with Richmond Heights in the finals as it's projected, because Richmond Heights, on their way to the state finals last year, was a team that knocked out the Hawks in the state semifinals over in Dayton. So I'm curious to see where that will go. Before we get into our last or to our next segment, I should say, there were a number of names that were listed off this week. It was the All Federal League team that was presented, I believe, for girls basketball, if I'm not mistaken.
Boys basketball.
Boys basketball. Excuse me. Yeah, I mean, a number of players that we've been essentially highlighting so far this season. I'm sure a number of them were among this mix. I mean, kind of take us through that.
Yeah. So here we have the first, second, and honorable mention, along with Player of the Year and Coach of the Year. So your first team, Mitch, consisting of 6 different schools: Owen Wolbert from Jackson, Brady Rollison from Green, Chance Kasenheiser from Lake, Jaleel Graham from McKinley, Ja'Cory Lipkins from Glen Oak, and Wesley Collins from Hoover. We named all those players throughout the regular season.
Yeah.
The second team, Mitch, I think would be able to compete with a lot of other, actual high school teams and, all second teams throughout the state. In the second team All Federal League, you have Xander Sabin of Perry, Trayshawn Foster of McKinley, Kyle Monterubio of Jackson, Jarrett Taylor of Green, Reese Zerger of Glen Oak, and Mitch Finnefrock of Jackson. And not only that, you have 3 sophomores and a junior on the second team list, Mitch. And on the first team, you have 3 juniors. So you're going to have a load of talent coming back from these first and second teams next year in the Federal League. Honorable mention, Nick Bundelow, sophomore from Green, Joel Brown, the senior from Perry, Landon Roth, the senior from Lake, Bryce Broom, sophomore, Glen Oak, James Bozart, senior from Jackson, and Reed Sims Jr., a sophomore from McKinley. So right there in the honorable mention, Mitch, the Federal League's going to be loaded again next year. And then you look to the Player of the Year and Coach of the Year honors. Player of the Year was center Owen Wolbert from Jackson, averaging 14.5 points per game and almost 9 rebounds per contest. And head coach was Jackson Polar Bear Boys head coach Tim DeBevick. I believe this is his 4th honor since taking over in 10 years with Jackson. So, and they were the last Federal League team standing, making it to the district championship. But Wolbert and DeBevick, it was a clean sweep for Jackson. But the Federal League first, second honorable mention, Mitch, I named some of those players that we talked about this year. Wow, is next year going to be fun? I'm already looking ahead a little bit, which I probably shouldn't do because we have plenty of other things to talk about. But it's hard not to when you see some of these names and see sophomores and juniors on the list.
There's going to be a number of guys returning for this upcoming season, and I'm sure a lot of them will be not just in the mix for the All Federal honors, but also the Eastern District or the Northeast District, I should say, as well as the potentially All Ohio. I mean, there's a number of names that we could see potentially grow into some very, very solid players throughout the mix. All right, when we come back, we're going to go over more some of the national stuff. There was one particular interview we want to get to later on in the show, not from us, but one that we saw earlier in the week, and some other interesting stories here coming up on Big Time Sports. Hey there, folks. This is Mitch Spinell, and I want to give you guys a quick message regarding 988. If you don't know what 988 is, it was created to make it easier to remember how to get help in the event of a mental health or addiction crisis. This is different than a medical, fire, or police emergency where 911 should still be called immediately. 988 connects you with Stark County's Crisis Center, which is equipped to help people in emotional distress or experiencing a mental health or addiction crisis. So remember, 911 for medical, fire, and police emergency help, and 988 for support in overcoming a mental health crisis in Stark County.
Buying a home has never been so affordable with record low interest rates. Hartzler's Quality Housing is ready to put over 40 years of experience to work for you. Family owned and operated since 1978, Hartzler's has a wide selection of model homes on site with a knowledgeable team to help make your new home a reality. Open 6 days a week. Visit them off I-77 in Dover or online at hartzlers.com. Hartzler's Quality Housing. Quality from start to finish.
You deserve the best. And at Ferris Chevrolet, Buick, Cadillac, Toyota, that's what you get. We consider you, the customer, to be part of our family. Anybody can make promises, but when you visit Ferris, you get the Ferris deal from a Ferris wheel. So if you're looking for a car, truck, or van, think Ferris.
You invest a lot in your home and vehicle purchases. Van Nostrand Young and Associates want you to feel secure should anything happen to those investments. We partnered with providers like Grange Insurance and other industry leaders to be sure you're presented with the most complete coverage to fit your needs. Because we're not only here to protect the items you invest in, we're here to protect your future as well.
Call Van Nostrand Young Insurance in North Canton at 330-497-1867.
We all have 206 things in common. Our bones keep us up and moving. And we at Cleveland Clinic Union Hospital care about every single one of them. From the tip of your finger to a brand new hip, our orthopedic experts will keep you going while keeping you safe. For every break and breakthrough, for every bone and joint, for every care in the world. Get the care you need when and where you need it. Visit unionhospital.org.
Wendy's without the Wendy's app is like Nugs without the sauce. Or a Frosty without the fries. Or a hamburger without the fresh beef. No! Level up. Get the app to order ahead, order delivery, earn free food, and get app-exclusive offers. One app, all the Wendy's.
Offer for a limited time at participating Wendy's. Terms apply. App registration required. Fresh beef available in the contiguous U.S., Alaska, and Canada.
Vibe Auto Sales, located on West High Avenue in New Philadelphia and Cleveland Avenue in Canton, is a used car dealership committed to getting financing for everyone. We give every customer that walks in our showrooms a prime buying experience, no matter their credit score or financial situation. Current inventory can be viewed at www.wefinancenow.com. Check out our Facebook pages for the most up-to-date information about upcoming events and promotions happening at Vive Auto Sales.
Get out of the dugout and onto the field with help from Velocity Sports. Velocity Sports is a baseball and softball training academy with locations in North Canton and Canal Fulton. Our new Canal Fulton features 10,000 square feet of training space with 6 cages for hitting and pitching and a large commercial weight room. Velocity Sports will sharpen your skills and get you in the starting lineup. For more info, go to velosportsohio.com.
And we're back here on the Big Time Sports Podcast Show, Mitch Spinell and Mitchell Ballas. So, Mitch, what I want to start off with segment 2, mostly an NFL-centric segment, is the one interview that I saw yesterday that you sent me. It was from the newest episode of Pardon My Take, obviously the Big Barstool Sports Podcast, hosted by Big Cat and commentator. And they interviewed Cleveland Browns head coach Kevin Stefanski. I believe this is the first time he's ever been on the show. I can't imagine him being on at any other point. Just kind of knowing the personality that Kevin is compared to those two. But I think Kevin personally went in there, and I don't think he blew away any people. This is kind of like par for the course with Kevin. He did just enough to kind of ride that line of, you can kind of get a good feeling of this guy. There were some points that I liked that he made. There was one point especially that he made that made me laugh. I want to get your thoughts though first. I mean, what did you think the image was of Stefanski after this interview?
I actually think I'm a little different than you here, Mitch. I think he showed more of a personality here than he's really shown in most interviews with the local media. In fact, I know there were local media members who were actually upset because they don't get this type of exclusive time with Kevin Stefanski. I mean, he was on the show, it looked like, for about roughly 40 minutes in the interview with the Pardon My Take crew. I thought he showed some character. He was kind of funny, laughing, especially towards the tail end when it got away from football, talking about a dog for his daughter that, Big Cat promised. I thought that was funny, but
and he got his daughter's name wrong too.
Yeah.
The whole thing.
It was, I was actually entertained. I thought Kevin did touch on some things that were actually pretty intriguing. And I don't know why he would be slightly different here with an actual national company, we'll say, because Pardon My Take is it's number one sports podcast in the world. They're entertaining, but at the same time, I thought there was a lot of good stuff. And I thought there was a couple of things that made me raise my eyebrow yesterday in some of his answers. So I'm intrigued to see what you thought and, what we kind of picked out of that was very interesting.
Well, I'm curious as to what raised your eyebrows, because my thing yesterday was I was very focused in on when they kind of asked him about the particular play calling they might have had, which was a huge complaint last season because a lot of people thought that they did not run the ball enough with 2 Pro Bowl caliber tailbacks, Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt. And by the way, you could tell that, Kareem's on his way out because he was not mentioned once by Stefanski in the present tense of this upcoming season. It was just kind of like we got guys like Njoku and Nick Chubb, and then that's it. No, but it was, in all seriousness, it was interesting to hear him kind of address the sort of complaints that we were hearing a lot of last season, particularly from our own mouths. It was Stefanski kind of addressing what was, according to him, a fallacy of the philosophy of trying to balance the run versus the pass. He said, quote, "That's a fallacy. You don't have to establish the run to throw," unquote. I mean, maybe not in today's NFL where we're more pass happy than ever before, and it's not as usual to kind of just start off with the basic run up the middle. But I'm still wondering if there could be more of a balance, because he even went on to say, quote, "I think play action has been proven that you don't need to have a good running attack or be running the ball to get the linebackers and the safeties up," unquote. That might be true if you especially have a great quarterback talent in your league. If you have a Patrick Mahomes or a Joe Burrow or, something along the lines of a Jalen Hurts. But I don't know, with the way the Browns quarterbacks were this season, and I give Jacoby credit for having to step in that point, and then Deshaun's probably going to be better this year than he was last year. I kind of looked at that and I was thinking to myself, yeah, you still could have maybe addressed that a little bit, especially in the game that they were referencing, which was the Saints loss in the wind, in the rain. He even said, like, we tried to go for the run and they were still stopping us. So we just figured, let's try pass. So
I think that I agree with him to a certain degree to throw the ball, to run the ball, to set up the pass, right? I think what you can look back on is the 2020 season. The Browns threw the ball to score. They ran the ball to win. For example, look back to that Tennessee Titan game in 2020 where Baker had 4 first half touchdown passes, right? The Titans thought the Browns were going to run it, and the Browns lit them up in the secondary, multiple touchdown passes, one to Hollywood Higgins that I can still vividly remember. DPJ scored in that game. It was just a very, very intriguing way. And then they ran the ball in the second half to run the clock down, keep the ball away from Tennessee. So I get that part. But Mitch, there are other times though, where it's like, what are we doing? And I think you look back to the Atlanta game, right? 4th and goal from the 4, just kick the field goal, take the points. You lost that game by 3. Yeah. It was interesting to see his take on everything. Obviously, we know how loved Nick Chubb is here for the fans. Well, it seems Kevin Stefanski feels the exact same way because he tells people Nick Chubb is my favorite player too. And we'll see, because there's been the reports all offseason the Browns want to go to this air raid offense, and they need to go get a speed wide receiver on the outside and more complementary pieces on the outside for Watson. We'll see what that brings. I didn't really take too much away from that. What I did take away was the fact that the guys often give any head coach they interview a lot of crap and put them in hypothetical situations that may or may not have already happened, a la the Packers in the NFC Championship game 2 years ago when they kicked the field goal. And they asked Kevin Stefanski about his time management, Mitch, because we've been very critical of it. I think anybody that's a Browns fan has been very critical of Stefanski's management of the clock at certain times, or just game management in general. Kevin Stefanski said that, he used to play Madden. Mm-hmm. And that, that's how, I think it was PFT commenter that, recommended maybe having a 13-year-old up in the booth in your headset saying I would call timeout here. And Stefanski said, oh, I used to play Madden. I used that, blah, blah, blah. Like, no, you didn't, because you'd be better at time management if you did. He also, there's no way he was even good at Madden either. That's what I took away from this. Kevin Stefanski has to be an awful Madden player on whatever gaming system he played on, because the way he manages the clock in an actual game shows me that he probably botched a lot of time in Madden games, because he's truly, my biggest gripe is he is not a very good game manager because his head is always stuck in the call sheet.
We'll get to the call sheet in a minute. I was fixated on that mainly because Kevin's from the first era of coaches that genuinely could have been brought up with the Madden franchise. I mean, you talk about the guys who are in their mid 30s to mid 40s and even 50s now. When you were a kid, when Madden first really exploded, the first year Eddie George was on the cover, you were probably in your teens to early 20s, and that's when it was more of a time for you to play video games. And especially if you're a football guy, I could see that. I mean, there was 1.2 during that thing where I think they were referencing when you're in Madden. And if you remember this, help me out here, because they had this analogous theory. They were asking him, it's like, oh, if it's at this particular point. Oh, I remember. It was like, if you're down 14 with 2 minutes to go and you score a touchdown, do you kick an extra point or do you go for 2? And Stefanski said, go for 2. And the guy's like, oh, yeah, I agree. And I sat there and I thought to myself, you do? Because I know the point is that you want to win the game.
It was down 13. Yeah, down 13 points.
No, I thought he said 14.
I thought it was 13 because if you get the 2, then an extra point wins it. If you don't get it, then a touchdown, an extra point ties it.
Okay, I'm gonna have to go back and listen to it, but I'm pretty sure I could have sworn it was 14 points, and then you get a touchdown. So it's down to 8? It would be down to 8 points at that point. So you're deciding to either go for 2 to make it potentially 6 or 8, or you take the field PAT, which makes it almost certainly 7. And I like that kind of highlighted the aggressiveness that Stefanski has kind of shown, for better or worse, over the last couple of years. It's just that when you don't get those conversions, when you're throwing a deep ball on 4th and 1 in Cincinnati, when you're, as you mentioned, in Atlanta, I get sort of frustrated with those sort of decisions sometimes, but there have been times that they've worked as well. You're just hoping that the team becomes refined enough that you can be more comfortable with that decision next year. You can have the sort of aggressive philosophy that teams like we saw in the Super Bowl, Kansas City and Philadelphia had, where even if it's a few more yards on 4th down, hey, let's try it. We can do this. And you're willing to take that risk.
Yeah, and I thought it was also interesting too when he was talking about trick plays. He said Andy Reid can do the ring around the rosy with his players because he's won a Super Bowl, right? He's proven he's been able to do that. And he goes, I don't know if I'd ever call a player where I'm having my offensive lineman go around in a circle before we do a play. I also thought it was intriguing that he talked about how he wants to boo himself along with the fans sometimes in terms of the trick plays he's run. And also that he made a mistake in calling the Amari Cooper pass against the Bengals on Monday Night Football, Michael Myers, which was very intriguing. And so for all Browns fans out there, whether you like Barstool Sports or Pardon My Take or not, I highly recommend just going and finding the segment of the interview with Stefanski, because I truly thought you got to know him a little bit better than we do as fans with local media. And I thought that, him opening up a little bit allowed you to see he is human. He admits he's made mistakes. And he also admits that maybe you shouldn't call a trick play after a serial killer like Michael Myers, let alone on a Halloween game on Monday night where Amari Cooper tries to throw a ball away and instead it gets intercepted.
Yeah, that one I got worried when I first saw the clip on Twitter because they didn't specify it was Michael Myers. I thought he legitimately was going to name a play after a legitimate true crime podcast serial killer. And I'm thinking, oh boy, but if it's Michael Myers, who cares? He's not even real. I'm sure there's someone who's like him that's real, but there's no one that we know of. But you bring up a good point with the him being human. I do kind of like that he addressed the stoicism that he has to kind of put the front on for games, because I think a lot of people turned on Stefanski's stoicism last season and maybe into the second year because we just weren't winning. We just weren't getting the job done. And it gets to a point where it feels like you don't have passion for what you're doing. And I even addressed that. The fact I was talking with somebody about this is that Stefanski doesn't have that connection, that personal connection that we are going to have as fans, that people who grew up here are going to have with the Browns. he talked about the Steelers victory in the playoff game. And people will come up to him and say, "Thank you for that. That was my Super Bowl." And he's like, "No, man, I want to win it. I want to win the Super Bowl."
Yeah.
And I'm like, you know what? That's a good attitude, way of thinking. But he doesn't recognize. It's hard for him to recognize those sort of personal connections. And if he stays there long enough, it can kind of creep in as well. But going back to his kind of blank-faced stoicism, I like that he puts on that front, win or lose, because it can be as much as you can think, oh, a coach doesn't care if he's putting on that front after a loss. I think he cares enough. It's when you get those guys who are a little more showy and a little more full of emotion that when you win, it's amazing. You can kind of bask in that as well if you're a fan. If you lose, it almost feels like repugnant. You become repulsed by this team and the way they're handling themselves, especially if the coach is doing that, because then it can allow the players to do the same. I'm more so on that philosophy of coaching, but I know that that's not for everybody.
Yes and no. To your point, I agree with a big reason for him is he doesn't want to get so emotional because he is the play caller.
Yeah.
He is the head coach. He doesn't want to get so emotional up here. You got to do it so the people that are watching can see, to a point where he can't get back down to even keel.
Yeah.
I think our biggest issue last year as fans, Mitch, and just people that watch football, there was nobody on the Browns sideline that were any coaches that could get fired up. That's going to change this year, though. Bubba Ventrone is a very fiery, passionate football coach. Jim Schwartz has already told you he holds guys accountable. It felt like last year there was no accountability on the defense, right? I mean, how many times did we see blown coverages happen?
Yeah.
Suspending Grant Delpit for the first play or first drive of the game. What kind of accountability is that? I mean, now you have Jim Schwartz who says, I'm going to hold all players accountable, Myles Garrett included. You have Bubba Ventrone who's going to come in here, who's a fiery football coach, has a personality, and he's played here. So maybe he gets it a little bit more compared to other coaches that have not been here. So I think you're already going to see a slight dynamic shift in terms of the energy and emotion on the sidelines, to where now we don't have to really go after Kevin, because I truly believe there was nobody last year on that Browns sideline other than players getting into it with each other, which you don't necessarily always want to see. I think that now we can kind of understand why Kevin's like that, because look, Sean McVay, for example, Mitch, he can get fired up. We've seen it before watching them. We've seen him do it in the Super Bowl, and he's good at coming down. But if Kevin's never been like that, you can't ask a man who has one job out of 32 in the world to be somebody he's not. But what you can do is ask him to go get guys that are going to help fix something that the team is lacking. And I think they've done that so far this year.
I do like that sort of sentiment that we can bring in some more pure, this isn't even a term, but I'm going to make it up right now, purely football coaches to come in and kind of mix them up with the guys who are a little more analytical, a little more calculated. That's kind of where I'm thinking with Schwartz and Ventrone, although who knows if those coaches are going to make the biggest differences with Stefanski still calling the plays. Time will tell if it's going to be the right choice to allow him to keep making the offensive decisions, because if you're 6 games in and this offense still can't get itself around with the talent that you have, there's going to be some serious changes, I'm sure. And then the last thing I wanted to bring up before we go on to our next topic is, did you hear him talk about his experience when he had to miss the playoff game against Pittsburgh because he got the coronavirus? Okay.
Yep.
So he brought up a point, and I can attest, I could probably see this happening to him. It is hard. It is a very out of body experience to be watching your team play an actual game, a postseason game, mind you, and you can't do anything about it. You're stuck in your own basement. And he's kind of just sitting there, and he talks about like, oh yeah, I was kind of pacing around. It's like I was calling the plays. Like I had my call sheet with me, and I was thinking to myself, okay, I'm trying to picture right now Kevin Stefanski in his home. He's got some chamomile on the coffee table right next to him, maybe a nice bowl of soup, and then you have like Browns flannel pajamas, some sort of t-shirt, and then you just have him like, this is the flattest thing I have, like walking around like this, like panicking around, being like, all right, guys, God, I hope they call this play. God, come on, Prefer, just call the freaking play. And then that was where I was like legitimately losing it in the car, picturing that mental image in my own head. But yeah, that was really cool. And they even asked, like, do you have a playoff win? And he's like, technically. And that was where I was like, oh, I was like, that was kind of one where they're like, did you hear them say it's like, oh, we got to ask a question for the Cleveland media to stir up? First of all, I felt called out by it, but then second of all, barely anybody brought that up on the shows today, because that's where I was like, oh, they tried to, I don't know. Look, all respect out to Big Cat and commentator. But yeah, I would definitely go recommend checking out their show along with that recent interview with Kevin Stefanski. So that's cool.
You think he was? Do you think he had headset on too? Like, if he plays Madden like he claims he does, he also might have a gaming system. Like I have a complete different headset with a mic when I'm playing PlayStation. Yeah, you think he was walking around with that on his head too while he's pacing his basement during the 2020 game?
I could see that. I don't necessarily know if it's this one in particular. It feels too bulky. I could see the one that you sometimes doesn't Xbox sometimes give you a headset in your new console box. I think that's the one you probably could get, the really cheap, crappy one that everybody has to go buy one of those to replace.
I wish there could have been a camera on him, because I wish I would have, like, watching the game and then wondering, is he walking around with the sheet going, okay, here I would call I'm calling this play here, and then he's watching. He's like, no, don't call that. Oh, we scored. Okay, good play.
I can almost bet you that when the COVID season happened and we were going into it, some TV executives probably wondered, hey, if we have coaches that are out this week or players that are out, can we get like some sort of setup in their houses? But nobody's going to want, especially a public eye NFL head coach like that, is going to want any images of their homes, aside from the outside, which people can see probably in a neighborhood.
It could be considered cheating too, but at the same time, a professional.
Well, maybe, but I mean, if it's on the television broadcast, what Browns player or coach is going to be watching the television broadcast and like keeping tabs? It doesn't matter. What does matter though is the one thing that we saw this past weekend, which was the passing of the trade or the franchise tag deadline, in the NFL. So a number of players tagged this week, a bunch of running backs, Tony Pollard, Josh Jacobs, Evan Ingram for the Jaguars. No, he's a tight end. But the one career. Oh yeah, career. But then the one that was big was Lamar Jackson. So what happened after that was what we call a chain reaction, where it seems now that multiple teams that may have been interested in landing the former MVP have seemingly and reportedly pulled out of their interest. There was a number of teams, I believe it was like the Falcons, the Jets were in there as well. We'll get to the Jets in a second. What were some of the other teams in there? Some other ones that were in the mix.
The Patriots,
Dolphins, Patriots,
Panthers, pretty much any NFL team that does not have a good quarterback, Mitch.
Okay, so it basically is now at this point, the Cleveland Browns have broken the rest of the league when it comes to signing quarterbacks, because Lamar Jackson is very, very good. No doubt about that. You could even say he's better than Deshaun Watson at this point. I don't blame that. He's coming off of 2 years not playing in the NFL. I still think there might be something going on between the ears, even though Lamar Jackson got hurt this year. But is he $270 million guaranteed handed to him? Good. That's where teams are stuck. And that's where the Ravens have been stuck since the middle of last season.
Mitch, we would know firsthand. We have struggled our entire lives because we don't have a franchise quarterback.
Yes.
We thought we had one. We thought we did. I still will to this day fight that after the 2020 season, we thought we had our franchise quarterback. Obviously, the Browns front office did not think so. But what did the Browns do, Mitch, when they realized Baker Mayfield wasn't a franchise quarterback? They went and met with a quarterback that had not played in a year and a half and got told no. Right? All reports say Deshaun Watson said, I'm not going to the Browns. So then what did the Browns do? The Browns gave him a fully guaranteed contract that had never been done in the history of the NFL. Now, the Browns got backlash for it because of other things besides the quarterback play. Let's be honest here, right? This is a guy with a lot of issues. So be it. But what that did, Mitch, is it allowed other quarterbacks league-wide to go, oh, Deshaun Watson hasn't played in 2 seasons. He's getting that. And Lamar Jackson specifically, I was a second-round pick. I've won an MVP. The offense is literally tailored around me. I'm going to get a contract just like that, if not more. And the Ravens all of a sudden said, no. Mitch, it is like all these teams, some of the teams we mentioned, had that setting on Twitter where you hit a button and a tweet is ready to go out whenever at a certain time. And as soon as the tag was put on Lamar, it's like the teams hit that. When is the last time you have ever seen an NFL team tweet or retweet they are not interested in a player?
Dude, when I saw that the Falcons Twitter account did that,
folks, we're not like, this isn't a lie. Go to the Atlanta Falcons Twitter page. They literally retweeted they are not interested in Lamar Jackson. Oh, really? Mitch, are you taking Desmond Ridder over Lamar Jackson? I'm not. Or if you're the Panthers, you taking Sam Darnold or Matt Corral over Lamar Jackson? Let me think about that. A guy who saw ghosts and admitted it. No, probably not. If you are, I don't know, let's talk about the Patriots, who right now are caught in the middle, and Bill Belichick wants to get a 7th. There is what I am saying, collusion, because what the Browns did had never been done before. And now there are 31 other owners who are very upset about it and have probably all, in some way, shape, or form, I believe, have said, hey, let's stick together here. We're not going to give another quarterback this type of money. We're going to make this a one-time thing. And Mitch, whether you want to think there's collusion or not, it is certainly very sketchy now that other teams have done things we've never seen happen before in putting out tweets that they're not interested in an MVP candidate.
Look at this. Look at this. Atlanta Falcons. Right? Look at, I can't process it. I can't understand it. I mean, I can understand it in the sense of these teams are panicking right now because they don't want to think about this too. They want to, look, I disagree with what the sentiment of Richard Sherman is saying here, but it is kind of a point where he even said today, they would rather employ worse quarterbacks than a former league MVP. And I think the blowback behind Lamar is, even though he hasn't missed 2 full seasons like Watson's has, he's missed a significant amount of time with injuries. You can say, whoa, what if Joe Burrow had torn his ACL this year? Joe Burrow, since that ACL tear, has been to back-to-back AFC title games and a Super Bowl and has looked good. So I believe
Joe Burrow's missed more time in the 1 year he missed than Lamar did combined games over the past 2 seasons.
I think so, because Lamar missed half the season this year and then a couple of games at the end of last. But yeah, it's fascinating.
And so my whole thing here is the Browns were told no. Oh, we're going to go back with Baker then. Baker goes, I'm not coming back. You just said out loud in public, you don't want me. Why would I come back to you? So Mitch, you said a word though there just a few minutes ago. Desperate. The Browns got desperate and they went and did something they had to do. There is going to be another team that gets desperate. Okay. I don't care what agreement the owners are in. These owners are billionaires with egos and they want to win. If you don't believe they have egos, look at Jerry Jones in Dallas. He can't get out of his own way. Right?
Yeah.
Somebody is going to get desperate and go after Lamar and probably have to stab the owners in the back. And guess what? Who cares? Who cares? This is your team. I get that you're in the billionaire club with 32 other billionaires, and that's fine. Do you want your team to continue to suck? To Richard Sherman's point, are you willing to employ worse quarterbacks and have your team suffer when there is a MVP candidate out there that is literally one of the top quarterbacks in the league when healthy? And last year, we can have the debate another time whether he was actually hurt or whether he was kind of protecting himself, saying, they're not going to pay me. Why am I going to risk this? But Mitch, I think somebody's going to get desperate here sooner than later because of the other news that came out this morning regarding the New York Jets.
Yes. So I want to get back to Lamar in a little bit after this because there was a point that I was talking to the other night, but there were some reports coming this morning from multiple NFL media figures that the New York Jets optimism to land current, and I say current, Packers quarterback Aaron Rodgers is growing. The Jets' increasing optimism follows their meeting this week with Rodgers, a contingent of Jets team officials, including owner Woody Johnson, general manager Joe Douglas, coach Robert Saleh, and offensive coordinator Nathaniel Hackett, formerly with Rodgers in Green Bay, if I'm not mistaken, flew to California on Tuesday to meet in person with Rodgers. And Johnson left the meeting excited and satisfied about the potential match. Look, Jets have kind of been in the mix. Jets have been in the mix for any other new quarterback so far this season, period. We thought they could land Derek Carr. They didn't. They went to the Saints. Rodgers, though, is an interesting choice because it would definitely bolster the Jets' chances in the division and for the rest of the AFC. I would think, even if Rodgers is 39 years old and arguably coming off his worst season with the Packers in a long, long time. He is under contract through 2024 for over $100 million. I mean, technically it runs through 2026, but it's like dummy years for cap purposes. So I don't know, man. Do you think this is a guarantee? But you kind of told me it's like, oh, it's all but kind of assured now that they're just kind of working out some of the details of a deal like this.
Right, because you can't officially say a move like this is official until both teams say they've agreed to the trade and acknowledge what the compensation is and whatever it may be. Mitch, if you go back and listen to some of the interviews, it seems that the Green Bay Packers are kind of done with Aaron Rodgers, right? Because if you ask somebody, is he your quarterback? It's a yes or no answer. And if it's not yes, and you give some other answer, it more so leans towards no. I think Aaron Rodgers wants out of Green Bay because I don't think Green Bay, he feels Green Bay has not done him any favors, which, Mitch, to a degree, I agree. How many guys have they let walk? How many guys have they not gone after? And then you need a wide receiver and you draft the backup to the quarterback in Jordan Love. That is what really triggered all this. The same exact thing that happened with Brett Favre and them drafting Aaron Rodgers. We are seeing almost an identical situation. And now how ironic is it going to be if Aaron Rodgers gets traded to the Jets? But Mitch, there's a way to tie this all back to Lamar Jackson because I just said a team's going to get desperate. If the New York Jets get Aaron Rodgers, the Jets, whether you want to believe it or not, are going to become a legitimate team in the AFC East. This is a team that already beat the Bills last year in the regular season. This is a team that's defense is kind of already set. They have Garrett Wilson. They have a couple other wide receivers out there. Aaron Rodgers gets there, Mitch. They're fighting toe-and-toe with the Bills for the AFC East. Last time I checked, there's 4 teams in a division. Where does that put the Patriots and where does that put the Dolphins? One of those 2 teams has been linked to Lamar Jackson for how long, Mitch? Because, Lamar's a Florida guy. Lamar wants to go home and play with Miami. If he comes to the AFC, which if you're the Packers, you're probably going to trade him to the AFC so you don't have to see him, right? As much as that sucks as a Browns fan, because it's like we probably have the top 6 quarterbacks in all of football outside of Jalen Hurts in our conference. The Dolphins and the Patriots are going to be stuck kind of looking around saying, okay, well, are we as good as the Jets with Rodgers and as good as the Bills with Josh Allen? But we're not bad enough to tank for a top pick. So what do we do? Mitch, they have to go. I'm not going to be shocked if it's the Dolphins or the Patriots all of a sudden who have to try to go after Lamar Jackson. I'm not saying a fully guaranteed contract, but what if they offer him a $400 million contract with $230 guaranteed? What if they do something like that? Because they're going to be desperate because the worst spot to be in, Mitch, is in the middle because you're not going anywhere. And with the talent the Dolphins have after trading for Tyreek Hill and having all these other weapons offensively that we saw Mike McDaniel do, and now you have a quarterback in Tua who he played well, but the concussion issues are a legitimate issue. 3 last year. Mitch, the answer is right there. The Dolphins are going to have to get desperate. And they probably are desperate as soon as that trade is announced, if it comes through, that Aaron Rodgers is coming to their division. And same with the Patriots, because Bill Belichick wants number 7 because Tom Brady went and got number 7 in Tampa. He wants to have as many as him. He wants to be the all-time winningest coach in NFL history, which 2-3 years maybe he is, depends on what he can get out of New England. But yeah. Lamar Jackson better than Tua? Is Lamar Jackson better than Mac Jones and Bailey Zappi?
Right now, yes.
I mean, I just think that as soon as a trade like this is announced, you're going to see some teams and front offices and owners go, oh, well, I want to make the playoffs. Well, you probably can't make the playoffs now with these 2 teams here. You still have the Chiefs. You have 1 team in the AFC North every year, maybe 2 now, right? You're going to have to make a move and somebody's going to get desperate. I also still think Washington's the biggest factor for Lamar because I think Dan Snyder says, you know what? If all you owners are going to force me out, I'm going to go stab you in the back before I sell the team and give this man a fully guaranteed contract, and you guys can deal with it while I leave.
Hell, he could give him a $300 million contract for all we know. That's how crazy I think Dan Snyder might be on his way out. And the Dolphins would definitely have the edge over the Patriots. Patriots have to shell out more money for Lamar to convince Lamar not to go back home. But yeah, Miami would probably they might have to be that desperate, or they can just stick with Tua. I don't know. That's a really tough decision to make if you're Miami's front office right now. And yeah, as far as Rodgers, it's an interesting short term plan that the Jets are trying to cash in on. I didn't even think about the Favre thing. You kind of blew my mind when you reminded me of that. It only lasted one season. I could assure you, Rodgers would probably last more than one season in New York, barring any,
Well, Favre also had some media incidents, but we won't go down that road.
Well, yeah, but that's nowadays. I'm talking about like.
Yeah. I just don't see Aaron Rodgers having that. We know
if anybody can have the New York press roll off of them like water on a tarp, it's Aaron Rodgers. Like the dude does not care about anything other than football, State Farm commercials, Jeopardy. I can't think of anything else. But yeah, that's going to be an interesting sort of little scenario there. I do maybe want to get back to Lamar later on in the show, but I want to take this break now because we have other stuff to get to. We want to talk about some college basketball with March Madness coming up, some conference tournaments of our interest are playing, and then we'll get to some other stuff later down the line. We'll be back here on the Big Time Sports Podcast Show.
The Furby Electric Supply Company has bright ideas for your home. Save money by converting to energy-efficient electrical products or add ambiance with beautiful lighting features. It begins with a professional consultation and a visit to the Furby Lighting Showroom. Then certified Furby contractors complete your project right and on time. Since 1934, 4 generations have built a reputation of quality and trust, and they offer emergency services too. Just visit Furby.com. That's F-U-R-B-A-Y. The Furby Electric Supply Company.
You asked for it and we listened. Buckeye Career Center is now offering Certified Nail Technician as an adult education program. This 216-hour course begins in November and will run Tuesday through Thursday evenings from 5 to 9 p.m. Learn manicures, pedicures, infection control, salon operations, and more. Other part-time certification courses starting this fall include phlebotomy and welding. Call 330-339-2288 to register or visit BuckeyeCareerCenter.org for more information.
If you're looking for a new or pre-owned car or truck, why not see the Parkway Auto Group? Parkway is a special group of automotive experts with 8 brands to satisfy your needs. Come see the difference at the Parkway Auto Group on Commercial Parkway in Dover. 8 brands and 1 family. It's Parkway Auto Group.
Fall is in the air and part-time career enhancement courses at Buckeye Career Center are on the horizon. Registration is now open for Introduction to Beekeeping, Basic Small Engine Repair, and Sign Language. These part-time offerings run on Tuesday evenings and begin in November. Let Buckeye Career Center help you learn a new skill or advance your current skill set. Call 330-339-2288 for more information or to reserve your seat in one of these or our other part-time classes.
You matter. Everyone plays a part. We all have a role. Each of us can make a difference. You do matter, and the best way to have a positive impact is to pay it forward. With each of us helping one another to cope, feel better, and know that we belong. Pass on the positivity today. Tell someone else they matter too. Alt Care.
Alt Care, Alt Care. Where you matter.
We all have 206 things in common. Our bones keep us up and moving. And we at Cleveland Clinic Union Hospital care about every single one of them. From the tip of your finger to a brand new hip, our orthopedic experts will keep you going while keeping you safe. For every break and breakthrough, for every bone and joint, for every care in the world. Get the care you need when and where you need it. Visit unionhospital.org.
Aaron back here on the Big Time Sports Podcast Show. Mitch Spinell alongside Mitchell Balla. So now our next topic here is going to be, as I check my messages here, some other stuff, including college basketball. Mitch, you were texting me last night while I was over at the field house. And that game I saw, the first one was Beechwood up against Cuyahoga Heights. Heights ended up winning that one. They pulled away in the second half. But you texted me you were kind of in a panic over the first round matchup of the Big Ten tournament between Ohio State and Wisconsin over at the United Center. And I'll give it to you. Ohio State was up 18 at halftime. They opened up to a 24-point lead, and 27 point lead, and then Wisconsin got a bit tricky. cut it down to what, 5 points, and then that was the end of it. So Ohio State moves on, but there were some clear and cut issues in the second half.
Yeah, Ohio State in the first 25 minutes of that game, Mitch, looked like they could potentially be the best team in the Big Ten. And this is coming from an Ohio State fan who's been very critical of them all year and also gambled against them in 9 of their last 10 regular season games. And I think Ohio State forgot you got to play a full 40 minutes because the last 15 were absolutely abysmal. They went scoreless from the 11-minute mark all the way below the 5-minute mark. And Wisconsin then went on a 19-2 run. They cut it to a 2-point or a 5-point game. And Mitch, I was sweating because I just couldn't enjoy a nice game. I thought, man, this is good. The young Buckeyes are looking good. They have to win 5 to win the Big Ten tournament. I don't think that's possible. Crazier things have happened. It's March, but it was just, I was sweating. I was so nervous. It was rough, but it was good to see Ohio State get revenge on a team they lost to earlier this year. They move on now to face Iowa, which is one of the teams that got a first-round bye. The winner of this then will advance to play a team that got one of the 4 double byes in the Big Ten, Big Ten tournament. So we'll see. I just don't know if Ohio State got trounced by Iowa the first time, and hopefully this is just not like what the Big Ten championship game was against Iowa women for the Ohio State women. Then again, Caitlin Clark is not on the Iowa men's basketball team, so.
Yeah, but even then, I'm sure they could beat some of the Buckeyes on here. And no disrespect. I mean, there were a number of good games that were played last night. You had Suing, who had a good game. Sam McNeil came off the bench, scored 17. It was just some of those games. I mean, Bruce Thornton especially. He had a good first half, 15 points. He had a rough second half where he just kept turning the ball over, not getting great shots, missing free throws. I don't think they beat Iowa this coming week, but crazier things have happened. We'll see if Ohio State can. Go ahead.
Felix Akpara.
Yes.
A name we were not familiar with because we have Zed Key. Well, 2 weeks ago, Zed Key announced he was out for the season with shoulder surgery.
Yep.
A tough loss for Ohio State. But I mean, Mitch, this goes back to last year. The amount of times Zed Key would leave the floor holding his shoulder. It happened against Purdue this year early on in the season in Columbus where he left the floor. His shoulder popped out of place. It was inevitable. He was going to have something done. Well, he got it done. And now someone like Felix Akpara, Mitch, someone we haven't seen play a lot. Last night, he made a difference. This is a guy all of a sudden, Mitch, averaging almost 2 blocks a game. He's over 1 block a game, but I mean, he has been a very pleasant surprise. He's another young Buckeye that you just wonder, man, maybe this team's so young. I know Bryce Sensabaugh is a stud, a phenom. I think he tied the record for most big-time players of the week or month award winners in Big Ten history. Does he come back? Is this Ohio State team really good next year? We'll have to wait and see, but it's just kind of nice to see these new faces coming off the bench. And Mitch, you saw it throughout. You're going to continue to see it throughout every conference tournament game for some of these teams. And it's what makes March Madness fun. And some people, Mitch, not me, but some people think conference tournament basketball is more entertaining than March Madness as a whole. Obviously, March Madness, the first 2 days are just chaotic and you love it, but conference tournaments are fun because you see these teams play each other for the 3rd time this year. And, somebody like Seton Hall that had beaten DePaul twice this year. And then DePaul beats them by a point, a 9-22 team that had lost 12 straight games in a row.
How much did that set you back?
I'm still hurt a little bit.
We're not going to talk about it. We're not talking about that, but we are talking about it. Some other things on here. We kind of mentioned some of the games we'll see coming up. Kent State and Akron could meet in the MAC tournament coming up here soon. But the big story also from college basketball, the last of the Blue Bloods is done. Jim Boeheim is retiring after 47 seasons officially as Syracuse head coach. So it's officially the end of an era that I consider to be the end of the Blue Bloods because so many of the longtime head coaches we've seen in college basketball over the years are quitting. You could say that likes of Bill Self and John Calipari on there. I think they were more part of the new wave of Blue Bloods because they didn't have a lot of starts compared to Jim Calhoun or Roy Williams or Mike Krzyzewski, or now Jim Boeheim is in there as well.
There's one left, and I don't know where he falls. I think he could fall with Bill Self and Coach K. I think he could go with the other group, and that's Tom Izzo. Tom Izzo to me.
Ooh, that's tricky.
Some of the runs he's went on.
Yeah.
Because Mitch, most of his, I don't think he was there as early as these other guys, but at the same time, he was a coach at a team that disrupted tournament runs for Jim Boeheim and Mike Krzyzewski and Roy
Yeah.
Williams and Jim Calhoun. I think that he's kind of the last older one, you would say. And I put that in quotes because I don't know how old he is. I'm not calling him old, but
Yeah.
in the sense of what we're saying, he is an older coach. But you're right, because I kind of do separate Calipari, Bill Self, and some of these other coaches away from Coach K and like the other names we've already mentioned. So 47 years at Syracuse. And not to mention, Mitch, you also had Mike Bray for Notre Dame, who is now stepping away from the Fighting Irish. He never won an NCAA tournament, but multiple, I believe it was 2 Elite 8 runs, 4 Sweet 16 runs, made the tournament more times than not at Notre Dame, really put Notre Dame on the map and restored their basketball, stance and domination here in the Midwest. So that's another name retiring, Mitch. And it's kind of crazy because these are coaches, although we haven't been alive 47 years, but we watched Syracuse. I still remember Carmelo Anthony at Syracuse with Jim Boeheim, and we've seen it since then. Coach K our entire life, Roy Williams. I mean, these are coaches that we have seen our entire life that are now gone. They're done coaching. It's kind of crazy to think about.
Yeah, we don't know Syracuse basketball without Jim Boeheim. You look at the 5 Final Four runs he made, 10 Big East titles, 5 Big East tournament titles, the national championship year when Carmelo Anthony was in school, and you have Adrian Autry now taking over the Orange program as well. Izzo started in 1995 as the head coach of Michigan State's program and then won the title within 5 or 6 years. That's an interesting one because a lot of those other coaches you mentioned started in the 70s, 80s, maybe even into the 90s. And then guys like Self, Calipari, Jay Wright began in the 2000s, and they had to build their way up into becoming the serious names in college basketball. So yeah, we're kind of building that new wave of coaches. Obviously, North Carolina new head coach, Duke new head coach, Syracuse soon to be. We just don't have a lot of those 25, 30, 35 year head coaches anymore among the top programs. I'm sure there's some other coaches in there in the mix that have been there for a long time. I mean, Chris Holtmann at this point would be considered one of the longer tenured coaches among the Power 5 programs, but who knows if that will be continuing for much longer. And we'll have a number of things to talk about here in the next coming weeks because the tournaments are coming up, obviously, not just the end of the conference tournaments, but March Madness as well. We're having our brackets out particularly soon. When is Selection Sunday? Is it this Sunday?
This Sunday, a week from today as we record, Mitch. And about 60 to 85 minutes, we will have tip-off of the first game in the round of 64.
It's going to be a good time. It's going to be a very good time.
So much fun.
I like it. So let's go to our final break here. We'll get into more of our topics here on the Big Time Sports Podcast Show. Hey there, folks. This is Mitch Spinell, and I want to give you guys a quick message regarding 988. If you don't know what 988 is, it was created to make it easier to remember how to get help in the event of a mental health or addiction crisis. This is different than a medical, fire, or police emergency where 911 should still be called immediately. 988 connects you with Stark County's Crisis Center, which is equipped to help people in emotional distress or experiencing a mental health or addiction crisis. So remember, 911 for medical, fire, and police emergency help, and 988 for support in overcoming a mental health crisis in Stark County.
Are you trying to increase your speed, quickness, vertical leap, and agility? If so, NST Sports Performance is for you. NST trains athletes ages 5 through pro. NST designs each program specific to the athlete's needs, goals, and sports. For more, visit nstsports.com. Locations in North Canton and New Philadelphia. It's nstsports.com.
It takes a lot of practice to have a winning team. Albin Title has over 100 years of combined experience handling real estate, title, and escrow transactions. They serve Tuscarawas, Stark, Carroll, Harrison counties, and more. So choose Albin Title for your next home refinance, sale, or purchase. They'll get it done quickly and professionally. Contact Albin Title at 330-334-5800 or visit their website albintitle.com. Let them put their experience to work for you.
Hard work is something you're accustomed to. Van Nostrand Young understands that principle. Our access is achieved with organizations like Grange Insurance. Safety and prevention specialists utilize our VanCan assessments process to ensure that you and your colleagues are in the best hands. You want the safest environment for your business, and we can guide you there.
Call Van Nostrand Young Insurance in North Canton at 330-497-1867.
If you're purchasing a new home, the team at Hartzler's Quality Housing is here to help. Take advantage of record low interest rates to make your new home a reality. Locally owned and operated since 1978, Hartzler's Quality Housing has the experience to guide you through the process. You'll find a wide selection of model homes on site to fit any budget. Open 6 days a week just off I-77. You can also visit them online at hartzlers.com. Hartzler's Quality Housing. Quality from start to finish.
You deserve the best. And at Ferris Chevrolet, Buick, Cadillac, Toyota, that's what you get. We consider you, the customer, to be part of our family. Anybody can make promises, but when you visit Ferris, you get the Ferris deal from a Ferris wheel. So if you're looking for a car, truck, or van, think Ferris.
Wendy's without the Wendy's app is like Nugs without the sauce. Or a Frosty without the fries. Or a hamburger without the fresh beef. No! Level up. Get the app to order ahead, order delivery, earn free food, and get app-exclusive offers. One app, all the Wendy's.
Offer for a limited time at participating Wendy's. Terms apply. App registration required. Fresh beef available in the contiguous U.S., Alaska, and Canada.
Get out of the dugout and onto the field with help from Velocity Sports. Velocity Sports is a baseball and softball training academy with locations in North Canton and Canal Fulton. Our new Canal Fulton features 10,000 square feet of training space with 6 cages for hitting and pitching and a large commercial weight room. Velocity Sports will sharpen your skills and get you in the starting lineup. For more info, go to velosportsohio.com.
And we're back here on the Big Time Sports Podcast Show. Mitch Spinell, Mitchell Bella. I don't mean to go back and do topics we've already covered, Mitch, but I want to go back to the Lamar Jackson thing because I was having a conversation with someone the other night, or actually last night, regarding this whole issue. They were kind of confused as to what this whole Lamar situation would be. And if you missed it during our earlier part of the show, basically the NFL owners are deciding not to give Lamar Jackson any interest in trying to trade for him now that he's under the franchise tag with Baltimore. It's not officially collusion, but we kind of know what's going on here because no team is vesting any interest for a quarterback that apparently wants $270 guaranteed million. They were confused. My friend was confused last night, Mitch, as to why these teams were so willing to vest their money with Deshaun Watson last year in comparison to someone like Lamar. And I tried to tell them, well, look, there weren't as many teams as interested in trying to trade for Lamar Jackson or Deshaun Watson compared to Lamar Jackson last year. I believe it was only 4 teams, including the Browns. Nobody was willing to give Deshaun that much guaranteed money except for Cleveland, which set a precedent for the rest of the NFL. And say what you want about what was going on off the field with Deshaun Watson, there was a considerable interest in what he could do for a team, despite not having played for the last 2 seasons. What I'm basically trying to get at here is I'm trying to get a better understanding as to what the difference was between Deshaun and Lamar and why it's such a weird hassle that these teams are all going through now to basically be like, hey, now we don't want anything to do with these guaranteed contracts. So we're just washing our hands of this.
I think it just goes back to my whole point of desperate because Deshaun said no to the Browns. Nobody else offered Deshaun a fully guaranteed contract. And the Browns, once they were reportedly ruled out of the running, went back and said, look, we'll give you the contract. We'll give you fully guaranteed money. Be the first player in NFL history to do it. First quarterback, highest paid quarterback, whatever you want. And because the Browns did that, and because Deshaun Watson did that, other quarterbacks now are going to raise their eyebrow and say, I want that. And Lamar Jackson, to me, Mitch, has a reason to say I want that because he did not come with any off-the-field baggage. He's an MVP winner. And he has proven a lot of people wrong that he can be a passer in the NFL, although he probably has had one of the 5 worst wide receiver rooms his entire career in Baltimore. Let's be frank there. I'm saying wide receivers, not tight end. Mark Andrews is a phenomenal tight end. But now that a player did that, other players want that. And I think that's why these teams aren't going after Lamar Jackson. I think that's why there's this hesitation now when, you know, what people are believing is collusion and owners saying we're not doing that. And realistically, Mitch, if this gets ugly, which there's a possibility it does, Lamar could find out a way to say, hey, there is collusion here. I can take him to court. Where he really gets hurt here, Mitch, is he does not have an agent. He represents himself. And you wonder if that's different if he has an agent, but I respect him for doing what he thinks is best for him in terms of representing himself and also holding out for money. Mitch, if he took the NFL to court, the Browns aren't going to be in trouble. When's the last time that the NFL would be in trouble and the Browns wouldn't be in the middle of that trouble? Because the Browns have no reason to trade for Lamar Jackson, right? We have our quarterback. We just saw, why would we go after Lamar? If Lamar says these 31 other teams aren't, you know, these owners are in cahoots with each other because of what the Browns did, Browns are kind of absolved from all this, which is kind of weird to think about. But back to your main point, I just think it literally is the fact that owners don't want to have to do guaranteed money, especially for a player like Lamar who runs. He's not a pure pocket passer. Yes, Deshaun can run. We know he's athletic, but running isn't his main style of playing. And Lamar has progressed as a passer in the NFL. You don't win MVP unless you can still pass the ball. But he's also prone to taking more hits. He has had injuries 2 times now in the past 2 seasons. Owners don't want to shell out that kind of money, and Lamar thinks he's worth that kind of money. And I think that's where the difference is. If Deshaun Watson would have went to Atlanta last year and signed for $230 million, but $180 million guaranteed, maybe Lamar's looking for $200 million guaranteed, and maybe the Ravens are offering to give him that. But teams don't want to get put into this situation with this type of all this money tied up in one position. And we know, we're Browns fans, we see now that the Browns are going to have to restructure Watson's contract and do all this, and there'll be cap casualty cuts that we have of players that are average, right? They have to, because they're going to have to save money for the cap. But I just don't think they want to do this. But I still think, Mitch, that there's a very good possibility Lamar Jackson gets from a desperate team. And also, you mean to tell me you don't think the Cincinnati Bengals in a year are going to give Joe Burrow what he wants?
They are. Well, this is where it's going to get interesting, because Joe Burrow might be the apex of the situation involving guaranteed contracts in the NFL, because eventually the owners are going to, and I think they're doing it right now to a point, the owners are especially going to decide, if it isn't resolved by the Lamar situation, they're officially going to decide by then, when is enough enough? When are we going to stop with all of the, okay, let's just give everybody guaranteed money. Let's just give everybody what they want. Let's just give everybody their top dollar. I mean, we just saw Daniel Jones. He didn't get the $45 million he reportedly wanted to, but he's still getting around 40 to 41 million, which is just a few $1 million off of what Deshaun Watson is getting per season with the Browns, which is insane if you think about it.
He's making $6 million less than Deshaun Watson in base salary every single year.
It's crazy.
$6 million less. And Mitch, I had this argument with somebody the other day. We were sitting here after the 2020 season. Baker's rookie year was magical and fun, right? Because the Browns had not won a game in so long. And then all of a sudden, Baker comes out and slings it in that Thursday night game against the Jets. And then 2020 happens. And it was like, okay, well, wait. Or 2019 happened, whatever. 2020 happens. And it's like, okay, look, we have our franchise guy. And the Browns said no. Baker is up and down as he was. He was up and he was down, and then he was way up and then down again. And you can point to injuries. But if I told you had to pick, before last season, you had to pick one quarterback to take for your team, Baker Mayfield or Daniel Jones, you're taking Baker. And then people go, well, Daniel Jones has had 3 coaches. Yeah, Baker had 4. Like, people don't understand. Daniel Jones had 1 good year. And I think a lot of that is the credit of Brian Daboll. But to give Daniel Jones, who's had 1 good year out of 4 as a top 10 draft pick, $40 million a year, to me is incredible. It only helps, in my opinion, bolster Lamar's case for why he should be getting paid more, whether it's fully guaranteed or not. But I mean, Mitch, $40 million for Daniel Jones a year? That's crazy.
It is. It is. And I'm looking over some of the details in regards to this whole situation with Lamar. It the biggest things for him, the biggest detriments to his contract discussions are a couple things. Number one, it's the amount of money like desired. No team's going to want a contract like that, even if it wasn't fully guaranteed. Some teams might be willing to take a risk on that, but no team especially is going to want it to be fully guaranteed. Number two is the injuries. You miss the ends of the last 2 seasons, this one really significant this past year, and it gets to a point where you may have wondered if he was able to come back. You don't want to risk you don't have a guy risk his future health by putting him out there in a very tough environment like a cold playoff game to further the injury. But at the same time, when you're tweeting out your own injury report and the team doesn't even know about it, that's not a great look for either side. And then the third thing is that he's an MVP, no doubt. That season was 3 years ago at this point. And it isn't a case of, he's not the same quarterback. He can be the same quarterback, but those results haven't been produced since those 3 years. And I brought you back to Joe Burrow. Everyone's like, Joe Burrow had an ACL tear and it was no problem. That was in his rookie season when nobody was sure if he was going to be a good quarterback in the NFL, when Cincinnati had one of the worst offensive lines of this generation. Comes back next year, and with a team that on paper wasn't as good as some of the juggernauts in the AFC, took them to the Super Bowl and could have won it on that final drive if LA's defense didn't stand strong. The next year, same thing. Get back to the AFC Championship, beat some of the teams you need to beat, win in Buffalo, which is hard to do in January. And if it wasn't for a couple of key mistakes and decisions, you could have gotten past Kansas City again. You could have taken on a Philadelphia team in the Super Bowl that I would argue was probably on par with the Rams team of last season if the Eagles were not just a hair better. So those are the ones for me. And we've been kind of saying that all off season, but we really have to take these issues into account, because I don't think it's just a case of, Lamar is getting absolutely screwed over here. No, he's not. He could easily have taken a lesser contract with Baltimore. He didn't have to sign the franchise tag. He could have tried to find a deal with another team, try to broker out a trade. It's not that I don't want Lamar Jackson to get paid. I want him to get paid. He deserves to get paid. He's proven himself to be a quality NFL quarterback. But at the same time, we're acting as if this whole thing it's going to become about the owners and the potential collusion that's been going on here. Not saying it's happening, but I find it fascinating to see where the player and the team, the Ravens, have ended up at this stretch of their tenures together.
And the last thing I'll say on this whole thing, Lamar did sign the tag. The tag allows him to negotiate with any team for as long as he wants, up until week 10. He does not have to play for the Ravens until week 10. If he sits out week 10, then he forfeits all the money. It's like a year never happened. Lamar, Mitch, realistically, now I don't know if he would, but hypothetically speaking, could say, all right, you know what? That's fine. I'm not going to play. I'm going to sit back for the first 4 weeks while you go trot out Pro Bowl quarterback Tyler Huntley. Let's see how you guys do. And he could do that. He could also wait through training camp to see if a team gets hurt. And then once again, who's going to be desperate? Who's going to come knocking and calling Lamar Jackson saying, all right, what do you want? Like, let's talk through this. There is a realistic possibility Lamar does not play a football game for the Ravens until midseason. And at that point, then he gets the money he signed for. If the Ravens suck and he comes back, all of a sudden the Ravens flip a switch, then to your point, all of a sudden it goes, he hasn't regained that MVP form in 2 years, but now the Ravens all of a sudden are making a late push for a playoff spot, or the Ravens are a legit factor now in the AFC North. Like, maybe Lamar is worth that money. Lamar did sign the tag, to your point, but it's not, all right, he signed it. He has, this small window to find a team. He can play this out as long as he wants. He really can. And if he wants paid, he'll have to suit up for that week 10 game for Baltimore, wherever it is, or, if it's a bye, I think it's week 11. But after that, we're going to know very quickly where he's going to go and how long. And I hate it, but I love it, because the Browns have done something for once that may potentially really affect the NFL and hopefully get Lamar Jackson out of our division, because that's my big thing, Mitch. As a Browns fan, I hope a team comes knocking and says, we'll give you what you want, and they're in the NFC. Because if the Browns did this and have changed the landscape forever and get an MVP candidate out of our division, I'll love it. I'll love it.
I'm happy you brought up the Browns because this is the one thing that we've been kind of pushing the entire offseason since offseason and the one before it. And I think we've been doing it from a different perspective than I might have here. We've been kind of touting the idea that the Browns have broken the Baltimore Ravens. They've broken the rest of the league by giving a guaranteed contract to a guy who hadn't played in 2 years. And we're like, oh, isn't it awesome? Isn't this great? There's a different perspective to this. A lot of people see the Cleveland Browns as such a desperate and such a poverty NFL franchise. They decided to give a guy who hasn't played in 2 years a guaranteed contract. Even if he were to retire tomorrow, he still gets all that money. Or that may not be true, but it's to a certain point. If you were to retire well before the contract ends, it still gets the guarantee money at a certain point. There is that reality that the Browns were very desperate to find themselves a quarterback, so they make this move. And a lot of people really don't like it because of the effect that it has done to these other teams, to the effect that it's had on teams to these other players. And where I'm very curious is no matter where Lamar goes, if he stays in Baltimore, goes to another team, no matter where these other quarterbacks sign and for how much money they sign, for us, it's still a matter of if Deshaun Watson worth the money that you're giving him? Because it's going to take a lot of factors to come together in a positive way for Cleveland's favor. That's going to make you say yes at the end to answer that question. And I don't know. Time is going to tell whether or not the Cleveland Browns are going to be looked at as a driving force for a very fascinating era of NFL free agency and front office moves, or if they're going to be more known for one of the most regrettable front office moves we've seen in league history, to the point where Andrew Berry may not be able to ever get another job again in the league, or at least not the one that he has a similar title of, that he would have a similar title of that he does right now. So that's we're going to end the Big Time Sports podcast show. We mentioned all the stuff to you at the top of the show. Mitch, what's the fact of the day?
Your fact of the day is Play-Doh. You know, the stuff you used to have as kids that came in different colors. Started out as a wallpaper cleaner before the head of the struggling company realized the non-toxic material made a good molding clay for children and rebranded it all.
A wallpaper cleaner. That's interesting. Isn't that the stuff where that's not the stuff where you press it on the newspaper and then you put it off? It's the print of the newspaper, or is that that's putty? Oh, that's silly putty.
Yeah,
okay.
Silly putty. Yep.
No, I remember Play-Doh. We always used to have like the little scissors. We'd cut it up in class. No, that was cool. That was a little fun thing we would play with. All right. Well, that's it. Thanks for checking into episode, I believe, 62 of the Big Time Sports podcast show.